The first 10 years of this century, we have had three major crashes. In 2000 was the dot-com crash, followed by the 2006 real estate subprime crash, and then 2008, the banking crash. The question is this next? This is the giant crash of 1929. Every time I listen to those guys on CNBC, I call it bubble vision, they keep talking about the giant crash of 1929. I tell you what, it doesn't even compare to this one coming. So that's why I write and I speak, and I'm very concerned about our futures, our well-being, and the state of the economy. I have no faith in the US dollar holding its value where our debt is going up. We're printing money to pay our bills. That's like using a credit card to pay your mortgage. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Not long ago, I wrote that the best time to prepare for a crash is before a crash. The biggest crash in world history is coming. That got a lot of news. That's the big news. The good news is the best time to get rich is during a crash. The bad news is the crash will be a long one, which is for me good news too. There's something about being old that is good. What I have is I've actually lived through history.
The S&P 500 is really the S&P 7, and it's being held up by Treasury Secretary Yellen and Powell. So there's no correlation between the economy and what Yellen and Powell are doing. I say one more thing is that I'm a little strange in that I like crashes. So this next crash is going to be really, really good, but it'll bring down gold, silver, Bitcoin stocks. But the good news is a crash is a good time to get rich. The big debate is there inflation or deflation? And if you look historically, what's happened today is the nominal debt to GDP is a correlation of M2, the volume of money, times the velocity of money. And the reason Yellen and Powell are scrambling is because they've expanded M2, so everybody thinks there's going to be inflation, but velocity of money, which is what Jim Rickards and I always talk about, the velocity of money is plummeting. People are not spending. So they pump all this money in, prices go up. Meanwhile, the Asians are catching up now that the ports are finally open. So it is transitory inflation. But the problem is we're stacked with this massive debt, and all it's done is bump up the stock market and real estate market. The money has not gone into the economy. That's the sad part. So the rich get richer, but the poor and middle class are getting poorer. It is tragic what's happening today. I don't know what it'll exactly be, but you can't keep printing fake money. That's M2. And the velocity of money keeps dropping, but the debt keeps going up. So you and I don't have to go to Harvard to understand that's not good. This is going to be the biggest crash in world history. We have never had this much debt pumped up. Debt is the biggest problem of all, but that's called M2, money supply. And the debt to GDP ratio is out of sight. So when it comes down, which it brings everything down with it, and I want to give people the big picture. The reason I don't care for Yellen or Powell, because they're both Marxist. And when I say that, I get nailed. I will read you a quote from Lenin. Okay, this is Latimer. He says, the establishment of a central bank, this is a direct quote, is 90% of a communizing of a nation. That's Yellen and Powell. And the other statement from Lenin is, and this is a manifesto here, the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. I'd say it's desperate people doing desperate things. As you and I know, the stock market, like I said, it's not the S&P 500, it's the S&P 7. And the separation between the stock market and the economy has never been worse. I'm just disturbed because the money is staying only in the investor market. Every time the Fed does something, the Treasury does something, only guys like me get richer. But the money is not going into the real economy. They're not investing. They haven't invested for years in plant and equipment. So we have massive, massive unemployment and underemployment. And that's why I quote Lenin, the establishment of a central bank is 90% of communism. And the best way to destroy a capitalist system is to debauch the currency. That was in 1971 that Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So in this book here, I kind of woke up in 1972 as a Marine pilot flying in Vietnam. And I went behind enemy lines in Vietnam looking for gold because it was illegal in 1972 for Americans to own gold. When markets crash, it's the best time to get rich. So I'm getting very excited about a crash coming because the better stocks will come available. Unfortunately, Michelle, there would be massive social unrest. That's what I'm more concerned about because we have not reinvested. The Fed and the Treasury have only invested in the investor class. They haven't invested in the working class. And the working class is without jobs, without pay, without this. Their 401ks are going to get toasted. And that's why I'm more saying I don't like what's happening. I've tuned into YouTube and all the financial markets 24/7. And that's one of the best things about technology. This COVID thing really pushed up technology. And I love YouTube. I listen to some of the most smart guys on planet Earth. And I was listening to Lacey Hunt, and he's talking about deflation. Then I listen to Rickards, and he talks about deflation. And Yellen and Powell, who work for the Fed and for the Treasury, they both work for the Fed, which again is a communist organization. He'll say so in here. Time to wake up is what I'm saying.
Most parents say to their kids, go to school and save money and work hard. But in 1970, when I graduated from school, $1 million at 15% interest earned me $150,000 a year. Now you could live on $150,000 a year back then. Another thing that's happening when people's incomes go down, they become dependent. Now the US government tells us that poverty has been beaten in America. Well, maybe poverty has been beaten, but what has increased is the entitlement mentality. The attitude that the government and other people should take care of me.
So anyway, the reason inflation is going to wipe out people is because the average person is a consumer. So everybody talks about, I went to, T-bone steak is this now, and gasoline's this, and toilet paper is that, and all this. But that's because the Fed are protecting the bankers. That's why I feel for the working class people. I think it's criminal that our school system is part of Marxism. There's no financial education in schools, and it's not a mistake. So I've been saying this since, My first book was, if you want rich and happy, don't go to school. This was long before Rich Dad Poor Dad. But today we can see what's happening. And people are still saying, oh, it's because the container ships aren't being discharged in Long Beach Harbor and all that. And I went to school. I can drive those ships. I have a third mate's license to drive ships and fly planes. But anyway, it's all BS. So the people who are complaining about inflation just know it's because the Federal Reserve Bank, the U.S. Treasury, which is Janet Yellen, who was also head of the Federal Reserve Bank, they're as corrupt as they come. They're communists. They're frickin' communists, and we worship them. This is what's sad. The Fed should have let those guys fail, but they kept them afloat. Every time they made money, it created more debt. It just created more fake money. And America got poor. The deficit kept going up because they had to have that toing and froing. Triffin's dilemma, plus Schumpeter, which is that capitalism is destructive. The whole system is based upon, if a dollar comes in, they've got to lend it out. And the collateral's going bad now. So that's why he says it's going to be deflation, not inflation. But the Fed has got to keep the illusion that there's inflation.
There's a lot of people who may or may not know they're in big financial trouble. And my concern is today, there's a lot of people, maybe they're not rich, but they're going to go broke. But let me give you my background on this whole thing about why we're in this crisis. 1974, I was just getting out of the Marine Corps. I was stationed in Hawaii at Kaneohe Bay Marine Corps Air Station. And I was looking for a job. So I went and I got a job with the Xerox Corporation, not because I love Xerox machines, but I had to learn how to sell. And that was the main reason. So I interviewed with two companies, IBM and Xerox. And I took Xerox. At the same time, there was this new thing called ERISA, which I really wasn't paying much attention to, but because I was interviewing with people, I kept hearing things called ERISA. And ERISA stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And every time they say the governments tell you they're going to secure your retirement, you know it's toast. I mean, I don't trust my government as far as I can throw it, and you can't throw it anywhere. So ERISA then led to this thing called the 401k. So over the next couple of years, like say 74 to like 78, I saw this exodus of school teachers leaving the profession, because my whole family is school teachers, and they were becoming financial planners. It sounded good, like they were experts and all this. And all I was saying to my sick and not so politically correct dark side, this is the poor leading the foolish. And I said, we're going to have a disaster coming. So you have these guys who know nothing about money, school teachers, or all these other people who are just quitting their jobs to have a profession called financial planner. And then they were advising people who knew nothing about money about their financial future. I said, man, there's going to be a train wreck in the future. Well, this is the show. The SOS is here. So if you are an old guy like me, a baby boomer who's had a 401k or an IRA, what I call defined contribution, DC pension plans, this is your show. And if you're a young person with a 401k, I'll take laps around the rosary beads for you tonight because you're an idiot. So this is what this show is about, because you might be in financial trouble. Your parents or your grandparents might be in severe financial trouble today because that 1974 Act, the ERISA Act, which led to the 401k and the IRAs and Roth IRAs, was especially designed for people who want to be told what to do. Go to school, get a job. Dave Ramsey's a friend of mine, and he says live debt-free. And truthfully, most people should do that, but I would never do that. Debt is money. So I come from the other side of the coin. It's all coins of three sides, heads, tails, and the edge. So on the other side of the coin is Dave Ramsey saying live debt-free, and most people should because they don't know how to handle debt. On the other side of the coin is I went to school to learn how to handle debt, how to raise capital using other people's money. And when you've lost somebody's money, it's pretty frightening. And so that's why I don't do this stuff, because that's the problem. You got conditioned to be led by foolish people who tell you what to do with your money. And I mean, some of the young people, I got a great job. It's got a 401k. I drop to my knees to take laps around the rosary beads. I said, this person's in severe trouble down the road. So with that, as you know, the markets are crashing. Our debt to GDP ratios are now like 125%. It's never been this high. We're the biggest debtor nation in the world. And people are in trouble. I don't really know what's going to happen, but something has to give. You just cannot keep printing money to solve financial problems. But if you awaken your financial genius, greed is good. I mean, getting rich is fun. It's the most fun game I play. And the reason I like it is because markets go up and markets go down. It's like life. And it's just real life. But most people, so awaken your financial genius and take control of your financial future. So that's what happened for me, was that when having a rich dad and a poor dad, I saw my poor dad, a PhD from Stanford and Chicago and University of Northwestern. He was just so content to have a PhD and a job and a government pension. Government pension is kind of a defined benefit plan where you guaranteed a paycheck for life. That's defined benefit. And that's why so many people are government employees, which is why our government's going broke. And all these people who get a government job for the defined benefit pension plan. We all know that. We know you're cowards. And, you just want to be told what to do and have somebody take care of you, give you a bottle of milk, with just no baby formula in it, unfortunately, but you're sucking on the nipple of the government, and the government's broke. That's a defined benefit pension plan. And then in 1974, they shuffled off to Buffalo all the baby boomers into defined contribution, which meant you had to contribute to it. And if it was there when you retired, good luck. You were lucky. But if it's not there, and that's what we're saying with this SOS show, it might not be there. Our education system is so corrupt, broken, and woke right now. But most academics have this point of view. I'm not interested in money. There's a self-righteous, stupid, underlying attitude, because I grew up with them. I'm not interested in money. I'm just going to do a good job for the kids because my whole life is dedicated to the kids. Well, why don't you educate them about money? Well, because I'm not interested in money. And there's this underlying mantra I've heard in so many people who are government employees. I'm just not interested in money. It's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard, because they're the first guys that fight when you take their paycheck away. And they'll sell their soul for their paycheck. But given the state of the economy, the stock market, and the war in Ukraine, and inflation going through the roof, and Elon Musk laying off 10% of his workforce, we're talking about what you can do now, given the state of the economy. And if you're by holding, praying for your retirement, let's say you're 65, you might be in serious trouble. I think in the baby boom generation, they're out of time. There's a very big difference because time is a big factor in this whole thing. So it's good. The crypto guys are learning it early. But the problem with our generation, my generation, was we came of age around, let's say, 1970. Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and all we knew was a boom economy. Even right after 2008, they just printed more money and it kept booming. But that's why I said our debt to GDP is now 125%. It means for every dollar we bring in, we're spending, we can't cover, our tax dollars can't cover it. So they keep borrowing more money. Not really borrowing more money, but kind of propping the market up. And now we're at the end of the line. But after you kind of realize what was going on in the stock market, all markets boom and all markets bust. But this could be the biggest bust in world history. It's a global bust. We might have a global depression again. You know, I grew up in a family of government employees, and their whole thing is a self-righteous attitude is, I'm not interested in money. I just want to do a good job for the community. Biggest lie I ever heard. You try to take their paycheck away, they fight like dogs. They'll bite you in the hand. You know, I mean, it's the biggest lie. And so many people will sell their soul now. They'll do anything to keep that job, but they're not interested in money because money is the root of all evil, you know? And that's what I hear going on all the time. So anyway, let's start this whole thing off is when financial planners became the fad new profession, you know, every school teacher, not every, but you know, they were just leaving in droves. Poor leading the blind. It's just shocking what's happened. Our problem is education. I mean, it's so hardcore Marxist right now. That is the communist game plan. It's always been to invade higher education. So in 1930, the Frankfurt School sent teachers to Columbia University in New York. And that's when the student protests began. And America became communist through our education system. I'm making more money than ever before today, but because I am a proactive investor. I was just saying to John, I just sold 2 properties that we made quite a bit of money on. And I said, where do you put your money? Well, you put it in cash. I bought Wagyu bulls, you know, breeding bulls. This is a Japanese breeding bull, which I always wanted to be, but never got there. But anyway, I'm in the food business now, and I'm in the oil business, and not stock business. I don't trust stocks or bonds. I never have. I don't have any. Well, I do have some, but they're companies I took public. But I am proactive, and most people, like you say, want to be told what to do. So I write about what I do in all my books. There's a difference there. So I just said this recently, I sold 2 pieces of land. I made $400,000, and I'm putting it into Wagyu cattle and cows. And next May, they drop more cattle. So it's called cash flow. You know, it's not that hard to do, but you have to kind of know what you're doing. So my whole strategy, being a Marine and a C student and never been bright in school, I always ask people who are doing what I wanted to do. So my friend who is investing in the bulls, that's what he does. He invests in bulls. And this bull is $500,000 and he breeds, you know, probably several hundred cows a year. And think of all the calves that drop from that. That's leverage. You know, I just kind of like the whole formula and I like to eat. Now, if you don't like to eat beef, chew on some celery. You know, I don't really care, but you get your little personal dignity up there and you miss the whole point here. Invest in what people need. People need oil. I invest in it. People need housing. I invest in it. People need food. I invest in it. There's a very big difference, but I invest with people who are doing what we invest in. There's a certain female that's famous on television, especially PBS. She uses cut up your credit cards and live below your means and diversify. I call it diversification, de-worsify. You know, just de-worsify your account. So this person was charged with something, right? And we won't mention her name.
I think it was a debit card fraud, amongst other things.
I sit there and watch all this horror show going in front of us. And then so many people are being trained because they go to school, tell me what to do.
That's why 78% of people, working adults, these aren't homeless people, are living paycheck to paycheck. That's why. Tell me what to do.
So let me give you an example. You know, Dave Ramsey is a friend of mine. His advice is solid. You know, live debt free. But the other side of the coin is somebody like me. And what I studied was how do I use debt as money? Because debt became money in 1971. You know, so I learned how to borrow money because debt is tax free. Then I invest in property and then I get my income tax free because appreciation, depreciation, amortization, these are tax laws. But that takes study. You don't just do it overnight, but you got to study. If you want to be told what to do, just listen to the TVs and pray. I mean, the buy, hold, and pray, I call it. During a crash is when you make most of your money. When Kim and I started off, I don't know how many years ago now, it was miserable. Tenant problems, breakdowns, this, that, painting, costs go above your rents, and you learn management so quickly.
I have a friend who was not successful at all, but was really up and coming. And he had a thing. He would only fly first class. I'm not saying do this because for somebody it won't work, but he needed that mentally.
Right.
He wanted to fly first class because mentally he wanted to think he was the best, and that's it. And even though he didn't have much money at the time, this is years ago, he would always fly. I used to criticize him, but it put him in a good state of mind, and he became a very, very successful guy. Very, very successful. So look, it's complicated, but whatever it takes to train that.
And I think when you say to somebody, live below your means, you wipe their spirit out. It's like saying somebody, if you want to lose weight, go on a starvation diet. It doesn't make you healthier to starve yourself. What makes me happier is the wanting to get better, to get smarter, to do better. You don't like to live below your means, do you?
No.